Yesterday we talked about the first half of the sixth paragraph of Nāṉ Ār, who am I? Because it's a long paragraph, I split it into two. So the portion we did yesterday was the portion where Bhagavan explains how whatever thought, whatever phenomena may appear. When Bhagavan talks about thought, he means any type of phenomena, because according to Bhagavan, all phenomena are mental phenomena. So whatever may appear, to whom does it appear? By using that clue, we can constantly be turning our attention back towards ourselves. And the portion we did yesterday ends with the sentence in which Bhagavan says, by practicing and practicing in this way, for the mind, the strength to abide firmly in it, or to stand firmly in its source, increases. So he continues on. This is a continuation on from there. In the next sentence, he says, Sukshma manam manam mulai indriyangal vayalai velipadam podu stulamana namarupangal tondrukindrana. That means when the subtle mind goes out by way of the brain and sense organs, gross names and forms appear. What he refers to here as gross names and forms, that is all types of phenomena that constitute both the external, the seemingly physical world, and the phenomena that constitute what we call the mind, all the thoughts, feelings, and so on. All of them are names and forms, and all of them are gross in comparison to the mind itself. Mind here means he's referring to the ego. That is, when the ego's attention goes outwards, he says it goes out by way of the brain and sense organs. Well, the brain and sense organs are part of the physical body, which is itself one of the gross names and forms. To analyze the process a bit more in a bit more detail, when the ego rises, it projects all phenomena, including the body. But it's the body that we experience as ourselves becomes the gateway through which we seem to perceive this external world. But both the body and the external world are all a projection of the mind. They're all just thoughts. Then in the next sentence he says, when it Hridiya til tangam podu namam rupangal marukindrana. When it remains, that means when it means the mind. When it remains in the heart, names and forms disappear. What Bhagavan means here by heart is obviously not any physical place, because that's again name and form. Heart means the center of. It means our real nature. The pure self-awareness that we actually are. So when the mind remains in its source, in the heart, in the place from which it rose, that's what he referred to earlier as the Pirapidam, the birthplace of the mind, which he clarified, I think, in one of the earlier paragraphs, saying the Pirapidam of the mind is, the heart is the Pirapidam of the mind, the birthplace of the mind. So when it remains in its source, names and forms disappear. That is, when our attention is, when we direct our attention away from ourselves, all phenomena appear, and when we direct our attention back towards ourselves, the mind returns to the heart, its source, and then all the phenomena disappear. This term nama rupam is a traditional term in Indian philosophy, particularly Vedanta philosophy, and maybe also other forms of philosophy. It means, nama means name, rupa means form. So it's used as a compound term, meaning names and forms. People often ask why the name comes before form. because you must have a form in order to name it. So it would seem logically that form should come first and then comes name afterwards. But there's a reason why prominence is given to the nama. Because when we see phenomena, we don't just see phenomena, we see phenomena as something. We always identify the phenomena we see. For example, we see something lying on the ground in the half light. If we see it as a snake, it causes fear, so many troubles. So what is important is not what it is, but what we see it as. That is our initial experience, is what we see it as. If we look at it more closely, then we see it not as a snake, but as a rope. We see what it actually is. So the nama means what we see phenomena as, and what we see forms as, and rupa is the actual form itself. So always in our experience, we're always, whatever we perceive, we're constantly identifying. I mean, the process of perception is seeing forms and identifying them. As this is Alan, this is Guru Das, this is Alistair, this is Michael. We don't just see the forms, we see it as something. We give a name to the forms. That is the significance of this term nama rupam. But in essence, what nama rupa means here is all phenomena, all things that appear and disappear. Because all phenomena have limitation, not only in time, because they appear and disappear, but also in space. So what distinguishes one phenomena from another, a happy feeling from a sad feeling, a table from a chair from a table, we're constantly distinguishing phenomena. What distinguishes one phenomena from another is its form. That's all the features by which we identify that. A chair has certain features that we see it and we say, this is a chair. Table has other features, we say this is a table. A sad feeling has certain features that we identify, this is a sad feeling. So all phenomena are what are called forms in Indian philosophy, and Bhagavan often uses the term form. And all forms we identify all forms as something. We have a certain feeling. Is it a sad feeling or is it a happy feeling? We identify with certain states of mind or certain physical things. We're constantly identifying it as this or as that. But what it all boils down to is phenomena, things that appear and disappear. How do things appear? Things appear when the ego or mind rise to see all this. When we turn our attention outwards, all this appears. When we turn our attention within, it all disappears. That's essentially what Bhagavan is saying in these two sentences. How this is relevant to the previous sentences is the whole practice of self-investigation. The natural direction of the mind is to face outwards, to perceive phenomena. When we're practicing self-investigation, we're trying to turn the mind back towards itself, towards its source, and thereby it returns to its source. So Bhagavan is, in these two sentences, he's clarifying, or he's expanding upon what he had said in earlier sentences. Then in the next sentence, he gives, or the next two sentences, he gives some important definitions. In the next sentence, he says, Manate veli vidamal, hridiyatil veitu kondirupatakutan ahamukum aladu antamukum endrupair. That means the name ahamukum or antamukum refers only to keeping the mind in the heart without letting it go outwards. The term antamukum is a Sanskrit term, but anta means inside, mukum means face. So facing inside is the meaning of antamukham. Ahamukham is a Tamil term. Again, it's using the mukham part is a Sanskrit word, but in Tamil, aham has two meanings. Aham is a Sanskrit first-person pronoun meaning I, but in Tamil, there's a pure Tamil word that means aham, which means inside or heart or home, or it has various meanings. It also means love, but so when Bhagavan uses the term ahamukham, he's using it in we can explain it in two ways. It can either mean facing inwards, taking aham to be the Tamil word aham, which means inside, or we can take it to mean facing I. But actually they're one and the same, because when we keep the mind in the heart without allowing it to go outwards, what are we facing? We're facing ourselves. So this is a very important definition. People generally think if you're closing your eyes and you're thinking some thoughts or something, you're facing inwards, they think. But according to Bhagavan, even the thoughts, even our feelings, everything other than ourselves is outside. So attending to anything other than ourselves is not inward facing, it's outward facing. So even attending to our thoughts, our feelings, that's all, for Bhagavan, that is facing outwards. Then in the next sentence he says, Hridayatilirandu veli viduvatakutan bahimukham endrapaya. That means the name bahimukham, which means facing outwards, again it's a Sanskrit term, antamukham, ahamukham, these two very frequently used Sanskrit terms. The name bahimukham refers only to letting it go out from the heart. So allowing the mind, in other words, allowing the attention to go outwards towards other things is facing outwards. So whether those other things that we are attending to are thoughts in our mind or the seemingly material phenomena outside, it's all facing outwards. So what Bhagavan clarifies here, but what facing inwards means is only facing towards ourselves. Facing I. That is the real meaning of facing inwards. Everything else is external. Otherwise, people think. Another thing people think, if they're meditating on some chakra in the body, that is facing inward, because they think it's inside the body. If you're attending to some deity or something outside, you're facing outwards. But even the body itself is external to ourselves. So it's all, attending to anything other than I is facing outwards. Only attending to I is facing inwards. So the reason Bhagavan emphasizes these things here in the context of the first half of the paragraph, what is required of us is to turn our attention away from all phenomena back towards ourselves. And that alone is what is called ahamukham. That is also what is called it's called ahamukham. Antamukham is also called Atma-vichara. It's called so many names, but what is required is turning to face ourselves alone. In the next sentence he says, Ividamaha manam hridayatil tangave ella ninevugulakum mulamana nan embadu poi poradum ulla tan martiram bilangam. That means when the mind remains in the heart in this manner, that means when the mind remains facing itself in this manner, what is called I, that means the ego, which is the root, the term Bhagavan uses here is moolam. Moolam means the root, the foundation, the cause or the origin of all thoughts, will depart, and oneself, who always exists, alone will shine. What he refers to here is Nāṉ Ār, that means what is called I, is the ego, or what he also often called the thought called I. It's the first of all thoughts. It's the root of all other thoughts. All other thoughts are phenomena. They're objects perceived by the ego. The ego is that which perceives them. So the ego is the root of all other thoughts. The thinker of all thoughts, you can say, if you, that's another way of saying it. So that will go. So when the ego, which is the root or foundation of all thoughts, go, that means all other thoughts go. And what will then remain? Bhagavan uses a Tamil word, Nāṉ, which he frequently uses, which simply means oneself. He, in his original manuscript, he underlined it in red. So it has always been printed in bold type, which is why I put it bold here. And oneself, and he says, Epodum ulla, that means which always exists, alone will shine. So the ego and phenomena are just temporary appearances. In waking and dream, the ego rises and all phenomena appear. In sleep, ego subsides and all phenomena disappear along with it. What exists in all these three states is ourself, is oneself. And that is the base, that is the reality. So that alone will shine. Then in the next sentence, he again gives us a, we can say it's a definition, but it's more than just a definition of a term. He says, Nān ennum ninevu kinjitum illa idame surupamahum, which literally means only the place where the thought called I, that's the ego, does not exist at all, or even a little, is Swarupa. Swarupa means, Swa means own, Rupa means form. But so literally Swarupa means one's own form, but it's a term which Bhagavan often uses to refer to our real nature. So our real nature is the place where there is no I thought. Obviously place, he's not here, he's using the term place in a metaphorical sense. He's not talking about a physical place. That in which there is no I thought, that is our real nature. And then in the next sentence he says, Aduvei monum enapadam. That alone is called mona, silence. So people think, oh, I was meditating for 20 minutes, I was experiencing silence. The I that says I was experiencing silence is the ego. So that is not the true silence that Bhagavan is talking about. What Bhagavan means by silence is the state in which there is absolutely no ego at all, no rising of ego, and therefore no appearance of any phenomena. That is the state, the real state of silence. That is the silence we experience in sleep, and that is why we have to experience sleep in waking, as it's again metaphorically said. That is, we have to turn our attention back within and merge into our source to experience that absolute silence, which is our real nature, our Swarupa. And then in the next sentence he says, Ivaru summa irupatu kutan Jnana Drishti endrupaya, which means the name Jnana Drishti refers only to just being in this manner. Summa irupadu means just being, or it's often translated in English as being still. Summa means merely, just, and it implies without activity. So being without any activity in this manner is what is called Jnana Drishti. Jnana Drishti literally means, Jnana means knowledge or awareness, Drishti means seeing. So it means knowledge seeing, or it can also be interpreted as the seeing of true knowledge, or experiencing true knowledge or real awareness. So what is sometimes called Jnana Drishti is only this state of just being. Just being means remaining in silence in our real nature without allowing the attention or mind to come outwards. And then in the next sentence he defines what he means by just being or being still. Summa irupadavadu manate amma sarupatil leika sevade. Summa irupadavadu means what just being is. In other words, that avadu added on the end means what is. It's a way of defining something. If you want to define something, if you say what this fruit is a strawberry, in that way, he uses the term what is. What just being is, so he's giving a definition here, is only making the mind dissolve, disappear or die in Atma-swarupa. Atma-swarupa is the real nature of ourself, our real nature. So making the mind, leika is a verb, it's a Tamil verb but of Sanskrit origin, and it means to dissolve, to disappear or to die. So only sleep is a state of summa irupadu, but because we enter sleep by sheer exhaustion, it doesn't help us to destroy the mind. So we need to enter that state. But that is, by turning our mind within, we have to try to enter that state that we experience in sleep, that state of just being, where the mind is completely dissolved in Atma-swarupa. And then in the next sentence, he just clears up a common misunderstanding. That is, people often, if someone seems to have extraordinary powers, if they're able to know what's going on in distant places, or these so-called supernatural or supernormal powers, or whatever, siddhis or whatever, people often take people who have such powers to be jnani, because they know so many things, and they call it Jnana Drishti if they're able to know what's happening in distant places. So Bhagavan clarifies Andri, which means accept this, accept the state of just being, in which the mind is subsided in the heart. Andri pira karataridal. That means knowing the thoughts of others. Mukal unadal, knowing the 3 times. That's knowing things that happened in the past, that are happening in the present in other places, and also knowing things that are going to happen in the future. Dura desatil nadapana varidal, knowing what is happening in distant places. None of these can be, these cannot be Jnana Drishti, because all knowing anything other than ourselves is not jnana, it is ignorance, it is ajnana, it's ignorance. So all these so-called supernatural powers or siddhis or something, they have no spiritual significance whatsoever. These are just powers of the mind, extroverted, the powers of the outward turned mind. So they're not, some yogis seek all these things. They do yoga in order to gain these sort of powers. But that is not spiritual. That is, that's just using the powers of the mind to face outwards rather than to face inwards. The only correct use of mind is a power. What is the correct use of this power? To turn within and merge it back in its source. So throughout this paragraph, what Bhagavan is emphasizing is we shouldn't allow our attention to go outwards. Whenever our attention goes outwards, it doesn't matter how many things appear. He says in one of the earlier sentences, however many thoughts appear, what does it matter? As soon as any thought appears, as soon as any phenomena, any name or form appears, we should turn our attention back to whom does it appear. In that way we should turn our attention back towards ourselves. By practicing in this manner, the strength of our mind to abide in its source will increase. So the whole of this paragraph, Bhagavan is very strongly emphasizing the need for us to be constantly trying to turn our attention inwards. So that's the end of the paragraph. Can I ask the first question?
Yes, please.
During our 10-minute silence, did anyone experience the silence that Bhagavan talked about in this paragraph? If we had experienced that, that is the silence from which there's no return. So there would be no one to say, I have experienced it. In a sense, we can say we experience that every night when we go to sleep. The problem with sleep is we experience silence, the state of just being, the state of our real nature, the pure self-awareness that we actually are in sleep, as a result of the dissolution of the mind. The dissolution of the mind comes first. The experience of pure self-awareness, silence, comes afterwards. In order to bring, and because that is experienced as a result of the dissolution of the mind, when the mind rises again, that silence seems to disappear. In order to experience that silence of sleep eternally, we must experience the silence, we must experience that pure self-awareness, and the mind must subside as a result of experiencing that. That is, first, while we have to turn our attention inward, turn the mind back to face ourselves, so that the mind, so to speak, experiences that. As soon as it experiences that, it will be dissolved forever. That is the permanent dissolution of the mind. So that is why it is said we have to experience waking, we have to experience sleep in waking. That is, before the mind subsides in laya. Sleep is a state of laya, it's a temporary dissolution of the mind, or nirvikalpa samadhi, or whatever other, whatever terms may be used. Before the mind subsides dissolves in manolaya, temporary dissolution, the mind has to experience its real nature. It has to turn back to face itself, and thereby be dissolved. If it is dissolved by experiencing its real nature, rather than just by tiredness or by controlling the breath or whatever other means, no other means will be adequate for destroying the mind, because by whatever means we bring about manolaya, whether because we're tired or because we take anesthesia or because we do some yogic practices, the subsidence of the mind always precedes the experience of silence. We have to, the mind has to turn within and experience that silence and thereby be dissolved. That is the permanent dissolution of the mind, called manonasa, destruction of the mind. Yeah.
So, in that state of permanent destruction of the mind, is there awareness of jnana?
The very nature of that state is awareness. But it's not awareness of anything, it is just pure awareness. What is called in Sanskrit prajnanam. Prajnanam Brahman means Brahman is prajnana, it's that pure awareness. In that state of pure awareness, we're not aware of anything other than ourselves. That is our real nature. That which is aware of other things is the ego or mind. That is the problem. So, in one verse in Ulladu, verse 13, Bhagavan says, Nāṇ Ār ajñānamam. That means awareness of multiplicity, of otherness, is ajnana. That is the nature of the ego. The ego cannot stand for a moment without being aware of other things. But the awareness of things is ignorance. Real awareness is not awareness of anything other than oneself. But self-awareness is not though we can say self-awareness means being aware of oneself, oneself is not an object of awareness. It's not an object perceived. Awareness is always aware of itself. Not that itself is an object of its awareness. It's not objective awareness, it is reflexive awareness, you can say. But no words can adequately describe it.
So, I can't say I had an experience because there was an absence of experience only when the mind comes back.
Yes.
Back on. So there was, I don't know, you can call it a Jagrat sushupti, because I was awake, but there was complete void. There was no one to be aware of that void, but only after. It could have been a few minutes, but there was absolutely an absence.
Yes. So
and then
yes.
And says, oh, there was this lapse.
Okay, but that state was a state that appeared and disappeared, wasn't it?
Sorry?
That state was a state that appeared and disappeared. Yeah. Whatever appears and disappears is a phenomena. It is perceived, the ego is still there in a subtle form, and that's a subtle phenomena. But so that isn't actually Jagrat Sushupti. In the state of Jagrat Sushupti, Jagrat Sushupti is not a state that appears and disappears. When we experience Jagrat Sushupti, we will know that is the ever-existing, our real ever-existing state. So any experience about which we can say, I experienced that, any experience we can recall, anything that has come and subsequently gone, that is not the real state. When the real state comes, we will find that it hasn't come, it is always there. That's why Bhagavan says, the true liberation is beyond bondage and liberation. It's not something to be newly attained. Losing everything is the so-called attainment of that state. So during the course of spiritual practice, we may have so many subtle, very blissful experiences, but anything that appears is not real. Because what appears will disappear. What we are seeking is what is ever existing, what is ever shining clearly. That is the fundamental self-awareness. That is the very core of the ego. The ego is a mixture of the pure self-awareness and adjuncts. That is that together that forms ego. So we want to separate the pure self-awareness from all the adjuncts. That separation, that isolation of pure self-awareness is what is called kaivalya. Kaivalya means a state of oneness or isolation, or the state in which we experience ourself and ourself alone. That is not a state that will come. From the perspective of the ego, we think we're going to experience that in future. But when we actually experience it, we will not experience it as something that has come. We will experience it as what is ever present. We are ever that.
So it's not a temporary state of manonasa?
There's no such thing as a temporary state. Any temporary state in which the mind is dissolved is manolaya, not manonasa.
Sorry, manolaya.
Yes, yes, yeah. But in manolaya, there's no ego there. Can you say what you experienced in sleep?
So that's a state it was a state where there was absence. So you can't call it any state even.
Yeah.
But only afterwards, when the mind comes back and it says, oh, there's something strange.
Yeah.
This place, but you cannot actually say anything about it.
Right, right. Yeah.
It was just, I think,
yeah. Well, yeah. Well, it's either a very, very subtle phenomena or it's manolaya, one or the other. It doesn't really matter because neither is what we're seeking. What we are seeking is what is permanent, what is ever present, which is ourself.
Isn't manolaya a stage towards manonasa?
Sleep is manolaya. Manolaya simply means the temporary dissolution of the mind. In manolaya, we can't make any spiritual progress in manolaya because there's no spiritual progress is for the mind. The mind has to. In the absence of the mind, it's like the train stopping in a station. We're not going anywhere. Only when the train starts moving we're making progress.
So what steps can be taken to achieve Mano-Nasha?
That's what this paragraph is all about. How Bhagavan began the paragraph, the very first sentence is Nāṉ Ār vicharane inaleye manam adangam. Adangam there means the cessation, the dissolution, but he's referring to permanent dissolution. Only by the investigation, who am I? And as I said yesterday, he really stresses that only by putting a double intensifier there. Vicharane inaleye, the mind will subside. So it's only by this investigation, who am I? In other words, only by turning our attention back towards ourselves. That is the only way to achieve Mano-Nasha.
Is ego the same as I thought?
Yes.
Because the Maharshi speaks a lot about I thought.
Yeah. It's just another term that Bhagavan used. He said that very clearly in the 8th paragraph, when he's referring to he says, Nineve manatin sarupam, thought alone is the nature of the mind. Nāṉ enum Nineve manatin mudal Ninevu, the thought called I, what is often translated in English as the I thought, but it literally means the thought called I, alone is the first thought of the mind. Aduve ahankaram, that alone is the ego. So what when Bhagavan, it's just an alternative term that Bhagavan used. And generally, in most cases, when Bhagavan uses the term mind, he's also referring to the ego. Sometimes, in verse 18 of Upadeshundya, Bhagavan clarifies about what is meant by the term mind. In the first sentence, he says, enangale manam, that is, thoughts alone of a mind. Like he says here, the swarupa of the mind is thought, is only thought. But then he says, of all thoughts, the first thought, the root thought, is the thought I, the thought called I. Therefore, what the mind essentially is only this thought called I, the ego. So we can use the mind in two senses, either to refer to the ego, or to refer to the collection of all thoughts. Of all those thoughts, then we can divide into two parts. There's the subject, the ego. There's the object, all other thoughts. There's the perceiver, the ego, everything else that is perceived. So what is the essence of the mind is the perceiver, the ego. No other thought can appear without it being perceived by the ego. But just like all thoughts are dependent upon the ego for their seeming existence, the ego is in turn dependent upon thoughts, because the ego cannot rise without grasping something gross. This is a very, very Bhagavan's teachings. Essentially, it is the same as the Advaita philosophy that has been there for thousands of years, and that was expounded in most detail by Shankara. But Bhagavan has clarified things a lot. One of the things he's clarified is, always previously it was said, the problem is avidya, ignorance. Previously, there was always confusion about for whom is the ignorance. Bhagavan has said ignorance is only for the ego. So actually, what is called avidya is actually nothing but the ego. The very nature of the ego is to be ignorant of itself, because what is the ego is nothing but a false self-awareness. The awareness, I am this body, is the ego. So the ego never arises without grasping something gross. So it's always aware of itself as something other than what it actually is. So what is called avidya is actually only the ego. Avidya is the very nature of the ego. So Bhagavan puts emphasis on this. All problems arise only for ego. That's why Bhagavan was constantly asking when people came talking about this problem or that problem, to whom is it? That is what the root of all problems is the ego, because all problems occur only for the ego. In sleep there are no problems. The ego rises in waking and dream, all sorts of problems we face. So, and ignorance is for whom? According to the traditional explanation in Advaita, ignorance is the problem. For whom is that ignorance? According to Buddhism, desire is the problem. For whom is desire? According to Christianity and other Semitic religions, sin is the problem. For whom is sin? That's why Bhagavan said, what is the original sin? The ego is the original sin. The sinner is the original sin. So that's why Bhagavan puts so much emphasis on ego, and I'm investigating. Why does the ego seem to exist? Because it's facing outwards. Because it's looking away from itself. If it looks back at itself, it's nowhere to be found. That's why Bhagavan calls it a formless phantom. It has no existence of its own. It can only rise by grasping form. It rises by grasping form, it stands by grasping form. By grasping form, it feeds itself and it flourishes. But if it tries to grasp itself, in other words, if it turns its attention back on itself, it dissolves back into its source. This is an immeasurably, it's a priceless clue Bhagavan has given us. It is so simple. If we face outwards, bahimukam, all the problems are there. If the ego, which is accustomed to facing outwards, turns back to face itself, it dissolves back into its source, and the problems are all over. So simple. But it's so simple we can achieve it here and now if we want to. The problem we now face is we still have so much desire and attachment for external things. We still have a taste to experience all these phenomena. That taste to experience phenomena is what is called Vishaya Vasanas. That is the nature of the ego. The ego cannot, the Vishaya Vasanas there are no Vishaya Vasanas apart from the ego. It's the ego that has Vishaya Vasanas. But the ego cannot stand without Vishaya Vasanas. So the whole process, the whole spiritual path is weaning the mind away from its attachment, its desire for external things. In other words, we slowly cutting away at the Vishaya Vasanas. How we do that? At each moment we have a choice. So long as the ego is there, phenomena are constantly appearing. We can either face the phenomena, or we can try to turn back to face ourselves. Every moment that we make even a little effort to turn towards face ourselves, we are slowly weakening the outward going tendency, the Vishaya Vasana, the liking to attend to other things gets weakened the more we try to attend to ourselves. So the Vishaya Vasanas are weakened by Vichara, the Sat Vasana is increased. And a time will come when the Sat Vasana is stronger than the Vishaya Vasanas. Then we are able to turn fully within, and the ego gets destroyed, and along with the ego, all the remaining Vishaya Vasanas are destroyed. Because Vishaya Vasanas obviously can't, there are no Vishaya Vasanas in sleep. It's only when the ego rises that the Vishaya Vasanas arise with it.
I have a question referring to yesterday.
Yes.
Assuming the mind reaches the birthplace.
Yes.
How can we be sure that he will not get rising again?
The mind reaches the birthplace every day in sleep, doesn't it? But it comes out of sleep. So why we come out of sleep? The reason is because we go into sleep in the wrong way. That is, but why we go to sleep, it is not because we turn our attention back towards ourselves, it's because we've been active throughout the day. Finally, The ego only has a limited amount of energy. After some time it gets tired of constantly projecting all these phenomena. It has no choice but to return to its source. When it returns to its source, it's like plugging in your mobile phone at night. You're recharging the batteries. So the ego's, where does the ego get its power from? Only from its source, which is our real nature. So it has to subside in that real nature in order to recharge itself, and then it bounces out again in waking to, with renewed energy. In the morning we wake up with all enthusiasm, bright and breezy, out for another day of activity, until the evening we come back and we're tired. This is the story of the ego. So we subside in sleep due to exhaustion. There are other ways of making the mind subside. We can take some drugs, we can take anesthesia or something, the mind will subside.
Atma-vichara.
I'm talking about other ways. We can have an accident, have a bang on the head without cold. We can do some yogic exercises, pranayama or various other types of yogic exercise to get to a state that they call nirvikalpa samadhi, which Bhagavan said is just a state of manolaya. It's just a state like sleep. All these means are artificial means. The natural means to dissolve the mind back into its source is this path of vichara. Because in the path of vichara, what is the ego? The ego is nothing but a false awareness of ourselves. We're aware of ourselves as something other than what we actually are. Now I'm aware of myself as Michael. Michael is the name of this body. I say I am sitting here, I am talking, I am looking at you, I am hearing sounds. All this I constantly identify myself with this person called Michael. That false, that I which says I am Michael, that is the ego. So it's a false self-awareness. So how to destroy that false self-awareness? Only correct self-awareness. But that correct self-awareness, we experience correct self-awareness in sleep or any other state of manolaya. The problem is the ego has already disappeared before we experience that. So while the ego itself has to experience that, but the ego can never experience that, because as soon as it experiences that, it ceases to be ego. That is the way to destroy the ego. So it's only by turning our attention within, by intentionally trying to, in sleep, what are we aware of in sleep? Nothing other than ourselves. That is what we are trying to achieve in vichara. We're trying to be aware of nothing other than ourselves. We're always aware of ourselves, but generally because of our interest in other things, our attention is going outwards. If we are as interested in knowing what we are ourselves are, as we are in knowing other things, our attention will easily go within. But when we try to turn our attention within, we all complain, oh, thoughts arise. Or sometimes people say, oh, I fell asleep. Either one or the other, both are escape mechanisms of the ego. Because the ego, the last thing the ego wants to do is turn within. And when I say last thing, it literally means the last thing. Eventually, the ego will reach the point where it wants nothing else but to turn within. That is pure bhakti. That is the supreme love, to know oneself. So that is the desire that will destroy all other desires. So this liking to turn within, this effort to turn within, like Bhagavan says, it's like the stick used for stirring the funeral pyre. Eventually everything will get burnt, and that stick will get burnt along with it, and what will then remain is what is always there, which is pure self-awareness. And the stick is burnt so it can never come back again.
I think you can't put in words. Experience.
Oh, of course we can't. I mean, words, words, yeah. That is why Bhagavan said the ultimate teaching is only silence. But how to experience that silence? That silence is our Swarupa. So it's only by turning back to face ourselves that we can experience silence. So teaching in words are necessary in order to turn us back within, so that we can, facing ourselves is listening to the teachings of Bhagavan's silent teachings. So when we practice this, so much clarity comes by the more and more we practice, the more and more clarity will come. the more and more clear and obvious Bhagavan's teachings will become to us. And then there'll be no doubt. Well, because ultimately, that final state is a state of perfect clarity. So there's no room for any doubt there. There's no room even for a doubter. Even the doubter doesn't exist there. So how can there be any doubt? So we don't have to worry about how we will know when we get there.
If you're practicing self-enquiry and you're asking to whom whatever you're doing, and then sort of you may experience a sort of like you see that the I that is, for example, if we're going through an issue, I go to who is this issue arising from, and I stay with the I stay with the I, I stay with the I, I stay with the I. And it's happened a couple of times when the I goes and I'm left with this piece. Now you said, I'm just trying to link these two things together, you said many times that if for one fraction we experience perfect self-awareness, game over. So then that thing that I'm experiencing, the ego's experiencing, isn't it? That's what's happening.
Yes, yes.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
that I
You said I goes and I experience peace. So yeah, because the ego can take many subtle forms, but so long as it takes any form whatsoever, it is still ego.
Right. So there is two. As long as there's two, it's not true.
Yes.
Yes.
So long as there's anything that comes and goes, anything that appears and disappears, anything new...
Because it feels like it's gone, but it hasn't.
It hasn't gone. It hasn't. But grosser, its grosser manifestations may have gone, but that is actually what we are doing in Maharshi's Gospel. When someone is questioning Bhagavan, how can we be sure that this will lead to that pure self-awareness, which is the real nature of ourself? Bhagavan says, in your investigation into the source of the aham vritti, they're using a Sanskrit term aham vritti, which is the same as what he calls in Tamil the thought called I. So it's another term for ego. So in your investigation into the source of the ego, you take the essential chit aspect of the ego. Because just before that, Bhagavan had said, the ego is what is called chit jada granti. Chit is pure awareness. Jada is all phenomena are jada. They don't have any awareness. These two have got mixed together, entangled, conflated, forming a knot. That knot is what is called ego. So what we are trying to separate the chit from the jada, the I am from all the upadis. So Bhagavan says you take the essential chit aspect, that is, we're trying to attend only to the awareness aspect of the ego. Obviously, the ego is the awareness, I am this body. But by attending to this body, I'm not attending to ego. We try to attend only to the I. What is that I that says I am this body? And in that way, we focus in on the awareness. And thereby we separate the awareness from all the objects of awareness.
Is it a cumulative thing?
Yeah. I mean, it's a process of refinement. Why we are not able to turn within and see what we are here and now, because our attention has become. Words cannot say this adequately, but in a metaphorical way we can say our power of attention has become very gross, because it's constantly attending to gross names and forms, to phenomena. It is very gross. So this gross power of attention that we have now is like using a blunt crowbar, an analogy Bhagavan sometimes uses. If you use a blunt crowbar to try and separate the fine threads of a silk thread, of a silk cloth, it's very difficult. because the crowbar's blunt and it's a big heavy instrument. So we have to sharpen it, refine it, refine it, refine it, till it becomes like a small needle. Then we can easily separate the threads. So the whole why Bhagavan says, in one sentence here, the last sentence we did yesterday, Ipadi Paraka Paraka, by practicing and practicing in this manner, for the mind, the power to stand firmly in its source increases. Yesterday I explained that power is the power of love. Another way of explaining it, it's an alternative explanation, but actually it means the same thing. That power is the power of the subtle power of discernment, of viveka, of being able to distinguish the chit from the jada, the I from all the adjuncts which are now mixed with the I. That is why it's sometimes it's described, the process is sometimes described as drishti of viveka. All phenomena, including the adjuncts that we take to be ourselves, all are drishya, they're all seen. We are trying to see the seer. In other words, we're trying to catch hold of the awareness only and separate it. The viveka means distinguishing, so we're trying to distinguish the seer from the seen, or the awareness, the perceiver from the perceived, the awareness from all that we are aware of. So that requires a very subtle and sharp mind. That's why in one verse, Bhagavan uses the term Nāṉ Ār. That means by a very subtle mind or intellect. And in another verse he says Kunda Ār. Kunda means very sharp. So our mind, but how to refine our mind, how to make it very subtle and very sharp? Only by this practice. The more and more we practice, the sharper and more subtle it becomes. And the sharper and more subtle it becomes, the clearer its viveka, the clearer its discrimination. So the more it will naturally love to know itself. So the love, we can explain it as being love, we can explain it as being a very subtle power of attention. Both are actually, they're both actually the same thing. Only the very, very subtle mind can have that pure love to be aware of itself. So this is why practice is necessary. So all these people who say, there are people nowadays who say, you come to me, all you need to know is to hear the truth from me, I will tell you your awareness, and all you have to do is to recognize that your awareness, and that's it. They completely bypass the need for practice. Bhagavan emphasizes the need for practice so much because it's only by practice that we can slowly refine or purify, whatever terms we use. It's a process of refinement of the mind, purification of the mind, refinement of our love, we can say it also.
That's all we're in control of, because at the end, the final thing, that's the ego can't kill itself.
Well, okay, let's leave the final for the time being. First, now we have a choice. At each moment we have a choice, either to attend to phenomena or to attend to ourselves. Most of the time we're choosing to attend to phenomena. But slowly we cultivate this habit of this liking to attend to ourselves. In that way we slowly refine our mind. When the mind has become very sharp, fine, ultimately, when you say the ego cannot destroy itself, that's true in a sense and untrue in a sense, because it is only when the ego turns to face itself, turns a full 180 degrees, that it is dissolved. But when it turns at 180 degrees, it is no longer ego. So that is why it's said that grace has to rise and grasp over. So this is we're reaching the very boundary to which conceptual understanding can go. We have to go beyond that. So it is. The same thing is said in many different ways, and sometimes those different ways sometimes it is said effort is all important, sometimes it is said grace is all important. But though it seems to us to be contradictory, it's not contradictory, because why we make effort is because we love to know ourselves. That love that we have to know ourselves, that itself is grace. So how do you separate? Because ultimately, what is the ego? When the ego turns to face itself, it finds it's nothing but pure self-awareness, which is grace. So there is no ego, there is only grace. So the grace has swallowed the ego. I mean, we can say it in so many ways, but...
Alan used to say that there is no grace without effort.
Yes.
There is no effort without grace.
Well, yes, but where the effort finally is, where the one who makes effort is dissolved, that is the fullness of grace.
Okay, that's the grace.
So again, sometimes we seem to be contradicting ourselves, but if we understand correctly what we're talking about, there's no contradiction. The words are contradictory because the words are inadequate. That's why Bhagavan sometimes said, speaking without speaking, seeing without seeing. Obvious contradiction. How can you see without seeing? How can you speak without speaking? But if you understand what he's pointing at, then it makes sense. He's deliberately using contradictory language to point to something which is beyond the scope of words.
Michael, can I ask you something that's arisen? Is it significant to spend time on weakening one sort of grip on how the ego grips on the world and as a reality, which is what commonly is identifying with it? I mean, I'm getting the feeling, and I've been there before, but it's not a permanence. Is that, do you have to reach a fundamental point where you realise, I know Bhagavan said it quite a lot, that creation myths and all that, although they have their place. Sort of not kindergarten, but does one, do you feel that one has to actually establish a sort of, not a repulsion, but a rejection? Is that like a necessary sort of step to really
well, the thing is...
to make a sort of decision at some point, this is not what it's all about.
Sometimes the spiritual path is described as... They're described as three elements. There's Sravana, Manana, Nididhyasana. It's important to understand what is the relation between these three. Sravana literally means hearing. So that means we read Bhagavan's books, we come to know about these things. Manana means thinking very deeply about it, because if we read all the books, there's so many books, there's talks, there's day by day, there's Bhagavan's own writings, there are all these things. Bhagavan said so many seemingly contradictory things in these. Different people, he answers questions in different ways. So we have to understand, we've got to think very deeply to understand what is the core of Bhagavan's teaching, what is the essential points. To make it very easy for us, Bhagavan has written works like Uludu Napadu, Nāṉ Ār and things, but these are works in which his core teachings are packed most densely. So if we understand these core principles, we'll slowly understand where everything else fits in, and why Bhagavan said to people seemingly contradictory things, because it's the level that person is at, that is what is going to help that person in their onward journey. So we slowly, our understanding gets more and more clear and coherent. It's all fitting in place. Everything is, nothing seems to be out of place. Everything is logically tied together. That is the process of manana. And then there's Nididhyasana. Nididhyasana literally means contemplation, deep contemplation. In our case, this is self-investigation. All three of these are necessary. It's not that we read Bhagavan's teachings, then we think about them, then we put them into practice. It's not as simple. It's a process of iteration. Because when we put it into practice, we get more clarity. The source of clarity is within us. So the more we turn our attention within, the more we are bathing our mind in clarity, so to speak. And then when we read Bhagavan's works again, we see more meaning in them than we ever could see before. And therefore our manana is also able to go deeper. And because our manana goes deeper, we get clearer understanding, we're therefore able to go deeper in the practice. So the three go on hand in hand. Yes. So as during this process, our understanding becomes clearer and clearer, more and more subtle, more and more deep, clear understanding we get. As we get more and more understanding, it's not so much that we get revulsion for the world, it's that we, in fact, we shouldn't get, it's not the world, the world is not a problem. The problem lies in us. It's our desire and attachment. And sometimes we do have to feel we do naturally feel revulsion because we want to go within. We believe what Bhagavan has said, that all happiness lies within. We're trying to go within, but constantly our vasanas are pulling us outwards. What are those vasanas? They're not things other than us. It's the ego's own liking that is pulling us outwards. So sometimes we do feel disgust with the ego, but we shouldn't just dwell on this, I'm a great sinner. Bhagavan says that instead of lamenting, I'm a great sinner, how am I going to be saved? If one is steadfast in self-attentiveness. So sometimes the disgust in the outward-going tendency of the mind will give us a push to go within. But we shouldn't be dwelling on that, the feelings of disgust. We should be clinging firmly to ourselves. Because for whom are the share vasanas? They're only for the ego. Is the ego real? No. What is real is only the pure self-awareness. So we cling to that pure self-awareness. As Bhagavan said, the essential chit aspect of the ego. We're clinging to that. These other things will slowly drop off. But it is a straight and direct path, but it's not a smooth sailing path because we're extricating ourselves from all these entanglements. So we keep on getting sucked away dragged outwards by these thoughts, and we again turn within. But when it says, what does it matter however many thoughts appear? I mean, what does it matter how many times the mind may go outwards? It's always readily available to us. At any moment we can choose to turn our attention back towards ourselves. So the choice is ours.
Yeah, I've just
Yeah.
I think you might have covered it.
Yeah. But
I'm saying you can't see the world if you're in the self.
Yes. The world appears only when the mind comes out.
Right.
When we face outwards, the world appears. The world means not only the physical world, the world of the internal world, the world of all our thoughts and feelings. That's also, the term world is a collective term for all phenomena. They appear when we turn our attention away from ourselves. They disappear when we turn our attention back towards ourselves.
I don't know if this is like a sort of hernia type thought, but, and is it relevant to undermine, I know who am I undermines everything, but that's what I've sort of come back to after going on a big cruise of Bhagavan work.
Yes.
I've come back to that now, and self-enquiry is the two strong. So it's practice now on that, but it was a nice journey, by the way.
Yes.
But it is, the mind goes, my mind goes, and I want to weaken this. It probably might come out of just go back to practice. But it's worth saying, is it worth undermining the thought of how, if God's perfect, this is where my mind is, if God's perfect, how did the ego arise, or is that like another sort of
whenever people ask Bhagavan, how did the ego arise? Bhagavan said, first see whether it has arisen.
Right.
If you can find it, bring it to me and we'll find out how it has arisen. Because we never actually see the ego. We seem to be the ego when we're facing outwards. But when we face back towards ourselves, Tedina lotum piticum, it's thought, it takes flight.
So don't give it any juice, really.
Well, we give it juice by facing other things. We deprive it of juice by facing ourselves, by facing itself.
It doesn't take flight, because you just said, okay, it takes flight.
Yes.
But who's seeing it take flight? That's what I was trying to get at.
Okay. Actually, well, taking flight, obviously, it's a metaphorical way of saying it. It dissolves. So what you were talking about, you're talking about the state where it's in the process of dissolving. But it's not the...
It's not that easy. It doesn't take flight.
It is, according, this is one point where none of us agree with Bhagavan. Okay. Bhagavan says it's very, very easy. It's ati sulapam. It's the easiest of all easy things. We all say it's difficult. Why we disagree with Bhagavan on this? Because the truth is, it is actually very easy. Why it seems difficult to us? Because we don't yet have enough love for that. Because we're not yet ready to let go. That willingness to let go is required. That we don't have. That willingness to let go is what is called surrender. So we are still clinging to, we still have a taste for all these phenomena. This taste for phenomena is what it's called Vishaya Vasanas.
So when you say find the ego, and let them investigate it, what you mean is basically do what I've done. Yeah. Because he searched for it, he didn't find anything, so he's not able to tell us how it came into existence, because for him it doesn't exist in the first place. So do it fully.
Yeah. Yes. Exactly. Yeah. Bhagavan gave very deep teachings in a very humorous way. Find the mind and bring it to me, he said. I mean, how you can find the mind and bring it to him? But it's a humorous way and a metaphorical way of saying you find it and you'll find there's no such thing. And then the problem dissolves. It is very clever.
But it's worth saying that these vasanas take a lifetime to dissolve, because it's not just...
If you can do it in a lifetime, you're lucky. In fact, it takes many, many lifetimes. The thing is, we don't know how many lifetimes we've been working at this. So the next moment could be the moment when they're all dissolved. Because ultimately, during the process of practice, we are weakening the Vishaya Vasanas. But the Vishaya Vasanas will be completely destroyed when their root is destroyed. So it's like you've got a dense bush. You want to root it out, but it's so dense you can't get at the root. So you have to first cut back on the leaves and branches in order to expose the root. So during the practice of Atma-vichara, we're aiming for the root and thereby cutting back the leaves and branches. But how close we are to actually cutting the root, we don't know. It could be the next moment. So we shouldn't think, oh, so many lifetimes to go. It is a process that takes many lifetimes, but the fact we're here means we've already been following this path. Well, we've been following other spiritual paths. We've finally come, this is the final spiritual path. So we've reached this point. How much further we have to go, God alone knows. But that need not concern us. What we want to do is, who am I here and now? We shouldn't be thinking of how long is this going to take me, because again, time is an idea that arises with the ego.
That's the point. Yeah. We shouldn't be concerned about.
Yeah. But we also shouldn't think. If you pay me $1,000 and come to my self-realization weekend, you'll get instant self-realization. We shouldn't. There are plenty of people doing this, and there are plenty of people following them. But it's not such a simple process. It requires a lot of hard work. Hard work means practice. Because why is described as hard work? Because the natural inclination of the mind is to go outwards. We're swimming against the current. And it takes a lot of effort, it takes a lot of patient perseverance. But Bhagavan has assured us, if we persevere in this, we will surely succeed in the end. Whether the end is this moment, or 5 minutes, or 5 years, or 5 lifetimes, doesn't matter. The thing is, we're heading in the right direction. Just keep on pressing on until when we reach the destination,
well, that's the aspect of surrender.
Yeah.
Then you're not concerned.
Yeah, exactly. This is why surrender and vichara, you can't have vichara without surrender. You can't have surrender without vichara. They're the two aspects of the same thing.
In the practice of self-enquiry, what is the role of dhyana? Is there a role of dhyana?
But role for?
Dhyana or meditation.
Bhagavan sometimes calls self, in the 10th paragraph of Nāṉ Ār, Bhagavan refers to, describes the practice of Atma-vichara as Swarupa dhyana, meditation on one's own nature, or self-meditation. So, what is meditation? Meditation means fixing your attention on something. But in all other types of meditation, you're fixing your attention on some object, whether it's a name and form of God, or a mantra, or chakra, or whatever it is, or your breath, or so there's so many things. I mean, any phenomena you can meditate on. But the difference between all other types of meditation and the meditation that Bhagavan teaches us, this is Swarupa dhyana. This is not attending to any object, this is attending to the subject. So we can describe it as meditation, but it is a meditation quite unlike any other meditation.
What is practicing self-enquiry when you are engaged in activity?
Yes.
How would you actually do it?
Well,
when you are engaged in your day-to-day work?
Okay, when you're engaged in your day-to-day work, not many thoughts going through your mind but have no connection with your work. You may be in the office doing your office work, but you're thinking of home, of what you're going to cook in the evening, or how you're going to pay the bills, or your children in school, or so many other thoughts will be there in our mind even when we're doing our work. If in the same way, if we are really keen to know what we are, even in the midst of work, we can be there can be a tenuous current of self-attentiveness, a background current of self-attentiveness. An analogy I sometimes give is, supposing a very close friend of yours, very dear friend of yours, has had an accident, is in hospital in intensive care, and the doctors have said, we don't know, he may live or he may die. It's just time alone will tell. We're doing all we can for him. So he's a very, very dear friend of yours. So you're thinking so much about him, aren't you? But you can't drop your life. You have to go on with your life. You have to go to the office. You have to be doing your work. But even while you're doing your work, you'll be the thought of your friend will be constantly there in the back of your mind. Why? Because of your love for him, because you care for him so much. If you have so much love and care to know what you are, you can continue your vichara, your self-attentiveness, even in the midst of all your activities. That's why it all comes down to bhakti. It's the degree of our interest. How interested are we, genuinely interested are we in knowing what we are? How much love do we have to know what we are? The more love we have, the more we will automatically be doing this, the self-attentiveness, the Swarupa dhyana, the self-meditation will be continuing even in the midst of all other activities. Sadhguru used to say another way. He used to say, in a day, how many hundreds of thousands of thoughts do you get every day? But how many of those thoughts are actually necessary for the immediate task you have in hand? Most of the thoughts we are thinking are not immediately necessary. So when you have 100, just for sake of explanation, suppose you have 100,000 thoughts every day. Maybe only some few hundred of those are actually necessary. All the rest are unnecessary thoughts. If you replace all those unnecessary thoughts with self-attentiveness, you will end up, in spite of your doing all your work, carrying out all your duties taking care of your family, doing your job, doing all the other things that we have to do in this life to maintain body and to keep body and soul together, or whatever they say. You can do all these things, but still most of your attention is on yourself. It is possible, but it requires great love, and that is what we're lacking. So how to cultivate that love? Practice, 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 practice. The more we practice, the more the Vishaya Vasana, the outward going taste, gets weakened, and the inward going taste, the taste just to be self-attentive, increases. That is why this practice, practice, practice is so important. That's why Bhagavan emphasized it. He said, Ipati paraka paraka, by practicing and practicing, he repeats the verb just to emphasize how important this practice is.
Just a very brief one. We're trying to separate the seer from the seen.
Yes.
The seer is the absolute, the seen is Maya. Is that right?
No. Both the seer and the seen are Maya. The root of Maya is the seer. Maya is only for the ego. The ego is the seer. The ego is the perceiver. The absolute, what we really are, is beyond seeing. And in the view of our real nature, there is nothing to be seen. Phenomena, objects of perception appear along with the subject, the ego. So they exist only in the view of the ego. That's why Bhagavan says, if the ego comes into existence, everything comes into existence. If the ego doesn't exist, everything doesn't exist. That means all phenomena, everything perceived, doesn't exist when there's no ego. It comes into existence with the ego and it disappears with the ego. But what remains when the ego disappears along, when the perceiver disappears along with all that is perceived, what then remains, that is the absolute, that is your real nature. That is not aware of anything, that is just pure awareness.
Nothingness?
Bhagavan says, not nothingness, fullness. It's nothingness in the sense that there's no phenomena. And there's neither perceiver nor perceived. But what is there is the fullness of Sat Chit Ananda. Fullness of being, fullness of awareness, and fullness of happiness. And I think if we have that fullness, we won't require much else. I mean, what else do we want but to be perfectly happy?
So it's a question of recognition, really?
Yes, it's a matter of recognition, recognizing who we are, what we are. Now we have wrongly recognized ourselves as these phenomena, this body, this person that we seem to be. We have to recognize ourselves, what we actually are. Right.
Can I just say something
related
to what I think is a very relevant point that was it's just come back to me about the question here about how to do it in everyday life, which is the real practice which everyone has got to get down to at some point.
Yes.
Is Bhagwan did give the tool that I'd just like to reiterate, everyone's probably heard it. But the mind loves to go on these cruises. Bhagwan's work, he likes to make Bhagwan a physical body. And so we get, that's the one of the traps, isn't it? The golden chains, I think we call them. The tool he did give that's just so simple, my mind tries to get rid of it, but he gave, it's so simple, you turn your mind around just by the simple, if you can make this a habit, write it down, stick it in big stickies everywhere. He just said, ask, because whatever thought, doesn't matter, you're having. asked to whom is this occurring.
Yes, except
and
he...
that is the method.
Yeah, except he didn't actually say ask, he said investigate.
Investigate.
Yes, yes. That's it. Whatever appears...
But that's the tool he gave.
Yeah, that is the importance of this paragraph. And he's the same clue he's given it elsewhere. But whatever may appear, to whom does it appear? All phenomena appear and disappear. Whether physical phenomena or mental phenomena or anything. All that appears, to whom does it appear? To me. So it doesn't matter what appears. At any moment we can turn our attention back towards ourselves, because we are always there as the perceiver of whatever is perceived. So it is so simple, but at the same time, as she was saying, it's so difficult. In practice it's difficult because of our lack of willingness to let go. But actually the practice Bhagavan has given us is the simplest of all simple practices.
Yeah, that's why I was just struggling, because if the mind loves to fold cloud and make it...
Oh, yes.
And that is the tool.
Yes.
If you can make that something concrete to return...
That's the whole...
You can push back
that's the whole...
with that.
The whole thrust of Bhagavan's teachings. What Bhagavan's teachings are... If you take any of Bhagavan's teaching, what he's constantly pointing us at is back towards ourselves. Who is it who's asking all these questions? Who is it who has all these problems? The reason Bhagavan asked these questions is to impress upon us the need for us to turn our attention back towards ourselves. Because ultimately, what is the root of all problems? The one who has the problems is the root of all problems. The one who has all the problems is the ego. So, what is this ego? Who am I? To whom do all these things appear? So we have to be constantly trying to turn our attention back towards ourselves. There are times when life is going smoothly, when we don't seem to be having any problems, life is going on smoothly. There are times when we seem to be overwhelmed with problems. Both in fair weather and in foul weather, we have to continue the same practice. We shouldn't take to practice only when things are going adversely, because we won't succeed very well. We shouldn't drop things do it only when things are going smoothly and drop it as soon as things are going adversely, because then it won't be firmly rooted. Our practice has to be firmly rooted. So whatever may be the outward circumstances, whatever may be happening in the outside world around us, whatever may be happening in our mind, doesn't matter. As Bhagavan says, what does it matter what appears? To whom does it appear? That is what we need to investigate. In the end of verse 6 of Arunachashtakam, after explaining how the world is created like a picture projected on a cinema screen, Bhagavan describes it in that verse, and then he ends by saying, let it appear or let it not appear. It's not however new. That's a very useful clue Bhagavan gives. We don't have to be concerned about the appearance of the world or the disappearance of the world. To whom does it appear? That is what we should cling to. Bhagavan's teachings are so simple. We make it complicated, but actually it is so simple.
And so easy.
So easy, yes. You sound convinced. Like we're all convinced.
I think,
yes.
Can you make it quite quick? Bring it to the end.
Time is rationed.
If we have like a very persistent desires that are not perhaps like conducive to having a peaceful lifestyle where you can practice inquiry like as the first priority, is it better to try and use the mind to overpower those desires, or is it better to
But the type of life we have, according to Bhagavan, is already decided by Prarabdha. If it's your destiny to have a very busy lifestyle, you will also feel driven to lead such a lifestyle. It doesn't matter whether we live a busy lifestyle. I mean, normally, the more we take interest in this path, the more we will lose interest in other things. So other things will tend to drop off, but we shouldn't be waiting for them to drop off. Sadhguru used to say, if a pearl diver wants to get pearls from the bottom of the sea, they shouldn't wait till the waves all subside, but the waves are never going to subside. You have to dive beneath the waves are just there on the surface. Dive deep within. There are no waves deep in the ocean. So we shouldn't wait for conducive circumstances or wait till our mind becomes calm and peaceful. It's never going to become calm and peaceful, and circumstances are never going to be ideal. So whatever may be the circumstances, we have to put it into practice here and now. If we do so, our interest in other things will slowly drop off, and we'll have less drive. The destiny may still be there. We may still be destined to be involved in all these things, but because of our love to turn within, these external things don't affect us.